In today's video, we're going to be talking about a 5-step pathway to help new hunters learn how to hunt sustainably for food. My name's Chris Gilmore. I'm the founder of chrisoutdoors.ca. Chris Outdoors is an outdoor education company that's designed to help deepen people's connection to the land, as well as increase people's self-reliance. One of my goals is to actually harvest a significant amount of my food from the land, and I do this between growing, foraging, and hunting. Now, I've been noticing a real resurgence lately in people's interest in self-reliance and getting back to the land, people that want to have a deeper connection to their food, and people that want to have a deeper connection to nature. And hunting is a great way to achieve all three of them. And if you do it ethically and with a bit of ecological knowledge in mind, it's also one of the most sustainable ways to be able to feed your family. But one of the biggest barriers when you're starting out is not having a guide or a mentor. You know, most people that hunt, it's because they have hunting in their family and had people to pass it on to them. But if that lineage was broken for your family, then it can be really intimidating to get starting, and there's an overwhelming amount of stuff to learn. And that's why we've been putting together a whole series of resources that we call the Hunter's Journey. We have a team of mentors and a community that's waiting for you. So if you're interested in checking out some of our more advanced learning opportunities, check out the link in the description. Now let's dive into today's video on the 5 different steps in the pathway though of learning to hunt. So the first step is to get yourself set up to hunt legally. And this is going to change a little bit depending on where you live. So it's going to be different from one country to the next and also one province or state to the next. But really what you need to do is do an internet search and just put in whatever your region is, so your state or your province, hunting regulations. And they're going to have a specific set for your area. So you're going to want to find your local book, could be a printout, or you're going to want to find the online version of that. Once you've found your local hunting regulations, there's a few basic things that you need to know. So first off, you're going to need a hunting license to be able to go out and hunt, and you usually have to carry this on you. In some areas, you're going to need a firearms license as well while you're out there. Then there's species-specific tags and licenses. So just because I have my hunting license doesn't mean I can harvest anything I want. So here, my next step is to go and get a deer license or a migratory bird license or a turkey license that allows me to take that one specific species. And then the last thing you got to know is that there's very specific regulations for each of those species. So for example, with migratory birds, I need to know which birds am I allowed to harvest and how many am I allowed to harvest on any given day, how many am I allowed to have in my possession for the entire season. So there's the essence of hunting regulations right there. Step number 2 is choosing the tool that you want to hunt with and learning how to shoot it. And there's a few different categories here. I'm going to go over just some of the basics of each. Now, the first category is working with bows. And you can go the traditional route with like a longbow. So this is actually a homemade bow I carved myself, but it's totally legal to hunt with, or a longbow. You can also look at compound bows that have the wheels in them. So when you pull them back, it basically takes the pressure off. It's not as hard to hold that shot. Or you can look at things like crossbows that I have here. A couple of the advantages of going with bows. One, you can harvest pretty much anything with a bow. So it gives you a lot of options for the species that you can hunt. And the other thing that's really amazing about bows is you often get a way longer season. So for example, where I am, there's only a 2-week rifle season for deer hunting, but the bow hunting season is almost 3 months long. The next category we'll look at is shotguns. And shotguns are very versatile weapons as well. Depending on the type of ammunition that I put into this, I can hunt almost anything with this as well. So I can use shot, and shot is basically just, this is a shotgun shell here, and it's full of little pellets, and as those project out of the end of the shotgun, they spread out. And that makes it really easy for hunting moving targets. So things like migratory birds, things like grouse. You can hunt birds with shotgun shot, or I can put something called a slug in the shotgun, and that now allows me to hunt larger game with that, things like deer, moose, and bear. So shotgun, very versatile choice for starting out as well. You can also hunt small game, or certain types of small game, with a small caliber rifle. This is called a .22. If you look at the actual cartridge and the size of the bullet itself, it's quite small on the .22. So this is designed specifically for small game, small animals like squirrels and rabbits. And from there, we move on to higher caliber rifles. These are designed to be able to take down much larger animals, and they're designed to shoot much further distances than shotguns are. So this here is a 30-06. That's a very common one. You also hear things like a 30-30, a 308. There's a whole bunch of different calibers. But what you really need to know coming out of this video is these are high-powered, long distance, designed for large game. I'm not shooting at birds with these. And if you look at the cartridge here, you can see how much bigger that is compared to the .22 round I showed you a moment ago. The third phase is to wrap your head around what gear do you need to get started. Now, what I want you to remember right off the bat is gear is a multi-billion-dollar industry. They're trying to sell you everything. And at the end of the day, there's multiple different strategies for how you can hunt that all work successfully. And if you're just learning, you don't actually really know what your strategy is yet. So I actually recommend not spending a lot of money on gear when you're getting started. Develop your strategy over time, and over time, acquire the gear to support it. So let's talk about the absolute fundamentals that you need. So first off, you need your firearm or your bow, which we already talked about that. Next, you're gonna need some hunter orange for safety. Now this one often confuses new hunters, and you might ask, how the heck are you gonna sneak up on anything wearing this bright orange? But we gotta remember, first, it's about human safety, and if you're out in the woods and there's other hunters with firearms, it's more important to be safe first. Second though, not all animals perceive the world the same way that we do. And often when you're wearing hunter's orange, you're actually hunting ungulates, things like deer and moose and elk. And those animals don't actually see color the same way that they do, or that we do as humans. This actually doesn't look like bright orange to them. It's actually a dead color that just blends into the environment naturally. So no problem wearing hunter's orange with them. Other animals such as grouse and rabbit, the strategy that we're using to hunt them, it doesn't matter if they see us or we spook them. That's actually built into how we hunt them. You usually don't wear hunter's orange when you're hunting things like migratory birds and turkey though, because their eyesight is so good, and we need to adapt safety into our strategy for those animals. Now the third thing you're gonna need is the other clothing that you're gonna wear under your hunter orange. You don't need to spend a lot of money here. You can spend thousands and thousands of dollars on gear, and a lot of it's more about comfort than it is actually success. So I mostly wear Army surplus clothing. I love Army surplus wool. So this good pair of wool pants right here, just this earth tone green, the nice thing about wool is it doesn't reflect light. So it actually makes great camo, and another just earth tone wool vest. That's all you need is some old Army surplus clothing like this, or just general earth tone clothing works fine. If you want to get camo, that works as well. Once you're set up with your clothing, you need to think about how are you actually going to get your harvest out of the woods. Now, if it's small game, it's just a matter of picking up and carrying it. For larger game though, I actually have a sled. So if I harvest a deer, I put it in the sled and use it to harvest it out. Other people might use things like ATVs. So have a plan for how you're going to get your harvest out. And once you've had a successful harvest and you've retrieved it, you need the tools and the knowledge to be able to process it. So you're going to need a knife to actually skin, to gut, to butcher it. And then you're gonna need to know what you're gonna do with it. So for example, I like to freeze my meat. So I will wrap it in butcher paper and then make sure that I have room in my freezer ready to go. So you need a plan for how you're gonna process it afterwards. And then beyond that, you need some basic survival gear. You're gonna wanna have a map and a compass for navigation. You're gonna wanna have a first aid kit and just general stuff to keep you safe in the outdoors, things like a water bottle. But that's the essence of gear right there. You don't need much more than that. You can get all the other fancy things like decoys and calls and better clothing as your strategy actually develops. But for your first season, stick with the basics. Don't spend a lot of money. Step number 4 is figuring out where can you hunt to begin with. And there's kind of 4 different categories for this. So first, there's public land lands that anyone can go out and hunt on. Next, there's private land. And private land is a great option, particularly for safety, because you know that you're the only person out there. So who do you know that owns land that has species suitable for hunting? And if you don't know anybody, you can actually go and knock on doors, or you can write letters, put them in people's mailboxes, asking for permission. This is actually quite common, and you might be surprised how often people are actually open to this. A third option in some areas, some conservation areas actually have a limited number of hunters that they allow into the conservation lands, and you can get special permits to hunt in the conservation area. So if you're a new hunter looking for land, you might want to check in with the local conservation authorities and see if any of them have a hunting season, and if you can get special permission to hunt on those lands. And then the last option, if you have a little bit of a budget to work with, is to consider going on a guided hunt. Again, for beginners, this is a great opportunity to go out with somebody that knows what they're doing. They already know the land, they already know where the animals are, so guiding hunts are an option as well. Now, step 5 on the pathway is where the learning journey really starts to get a bit steeper, and it really helps to have a mentor in this part. But let's talk about what the basic sets are. So these are the skill sets to actually learn how to hunt. So we talked about learning to shoot, obviously, is one of the first things. The next thing we need to do is actually find the animals that we're targeting to begin with. And there is a lot to this piece here. So aspects of that include learning how to track, so how to find the tracks and the sign of the different species to locate them on the landscape. You have to understand the ecology and how to read the ecology of the landscape to know where is the habitat you're going to find them. And you want to understand the behavior and traits of that individual animal. all of those things go into being able to actually locate them and have the opportunity to potentially take a shot in the first place. You also need to learn how to hone your awareness, because the things that you pay attention to when you're hunting are quite different than when you're just walking through the woods. A perfect example of this would be the wind. As a hunter, I'm always paying attention to which way the wind is blowing from. You think about a deer with that big long nose, they smell things so far ahead of themselves. So when I'm hunting deer, I'm always hunting into the wind. It's absolutely crucial. So we need to hone our awareness, and we need to work on our movement skills. How do you move quietly and invisibly across the landscape so nothing notices your presence there? Absolutely key to the skill set. I also mentioned a few moments ago that there's multiple different strategies or different ways to go about hunting. So you're gonna wanna pick what strategy you're gonna use, and the strategies kind of fall into some basic categories as well. So the first strategy is to stay in one place. So you're either in what we have called a ground blind, on the ground with something kind of hiding you into the landscape, or maybe you're up in a tree stand or a saddle. So that's kind of a sit and wait approach to hunting. The next strategy is what we call still hunting. And still hunting, you are actually moving, but you're basically walking through the woods is really, really slowly, spending a lot of time observing and trying to actually catch an animal moving. And then once you see it, you're gonna try and stalk towards it and get a shot. So that's still hunting. There's another category called spot and stalk. And spot and stalk is about covering as much ground as you can. So this might actually even involve using an ATV or a vehicle or a bicycle. And what you're doing is you're going to strategic places on the landscape where then you can glass, meaning take a set of binoculars and look for wildlife. So with this technique, it's about covering as much ground as possible, trying to find something and then stalk in on it. Versus the still hunt, which is actually covering a very small amount of land, moving really slow and hoping something moves through. Beyond that, there's different tactics for, say, hunting with a dog, or something that we call pushing or drives, where like a team of people move through the woods and they actually try to spook up the wildlife, and you have people in strategic sit and wait positions trying to take the shot. So there's kind of 4 general categories to hunting strategies. And then last, there's the whole skill set around how to actually process your harvest. So how do you clean it and butcher it? How do you cook it? How do you store it? Maybe you want to get into actually using the other parts, so taking the hide and turning it into clothing, working with the bones to make tools, things of that nature. So learning how to actually process your harvest is a whole skill set in and of itself. And as I mentioned, you can learn all of this stuff on your own, but the learning curve is quite steep, and having a mentor really makes a world of difference. So if you're ready to take the next step on your hunter's journey and make this a reality, if you want to feel the empowerment of being able to harvest food from the land to bring home to your family and the deep connection that comes with that, and you're looking for a community of people with similar values, values of respect for all people of all backgrounds, reverence for the species we hunt, and people that believe in stewardship and sustainability coming first, then I invite you to come and check out some of our more in-depth experiences that are completely beginner-friendly on helping you learn how to hunt. Check out the link in the description, and I'd love to see you in one of our trainings.